Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Hurt Locker, starring Jeremy Renner, Anthony Mackie, Brian Garrity, forgive me if I said that wrong, Ray Fiennes, David Morse, and Guy Pearce, directed by Catherine Bigelow. Now, I remember this movie, I didn't see it in theaters, but I heard about it because of the Oscars back in 2009, 10, whenever the year that was, and it ran against Avatar, and I was surprised that Avatar lost the Oscar for this movie. But does it make it a better movie than Avatar? Well, let's see if this is worth it. Let's get into it. It's the year 2004 in Baghdad during the Iraqi war, and we get a machine on wheels that discovers there's a bomb on the ground, and we get introduced to the soldiers, Sergeant J.T. Sanborn, played by Anthony Mackie, as well as Sergeant Matt Thompson, played briefly by Guy Pearce, and another soldier as they're in charge of the U.S. Army Explosive Ordnance, I think I said that wrong, please forgive me, Disposal, or EOD for short. Yeah, as they put Sergeant Thompson in a bomb suit to deactivate a type of bomb called C4, as the civilians of Baghdad watch the situation go down, and it ends up with the man pushing the button on a cell phone in order to make the C4 explode, and it kills Sergeant Thompson. And as an opener, it grabbed me. Like, this movie is very fucking intense. Like, I was on the edge of my seat during the opener, and I really liked the soldiers very much, but the shaky cam was bothering me, as there were times it would bother me for half the movie. We move on to after the burial of Sergeant Thompson, and Sergeant Sanborn is introduced to Staff Sergeant William James, played by Jeremy Renner, before he was ever an Avenger, like Anthony Mackie. As they drive around looking for bombs, and there's something wrong going on as they make a stop at where another army car is at, and the windows were damaged. And James sees a little American flag being waved at the other soldiers, and he sees there's a bomb nearby as it looks too tight for them to get to the bomb. And James gets to the bomb suit on, gets the bomb suit on, let me rephrase that, and he walks towards the area with some smoke as a taxi cab driver pulls up, and James pulls out a gun on the driver, and Sanborn tells James to come back, but he disobeys as he has the situation under control, and he shoots at the taxi cab a few times, including the front window, and he points the gun on his head, and eventually the taxi cab driver pulls back and they capture him, which was very intense. But at the same time, it was kind of a dumb move on James's part, and he is one brave motherfucker as far as endangering himself is concerned. And James feels like a reckless son of a bitch, and I'm not sure how I feel about him as a character quite yet, I'll say. James finds a bunch of bombs, like in a circle, which is haunting but powerful, a powerful moment and shot of the movie, as there's a lot of them throughout the movie, as I was getting goosebumps, but not as much as the recent Nosferatu trailer that came out in front of another movie I just reviewed, The Bike Riders, but it was pretty damn haunting. A kid named Beckham, like the soccer player David Beckham, selling some bad quality DVDs to James, and Sanborn talks with James about how it's his job to keep his soldiers safe and alive. And honestly, does this deserve the best picture of the year 2009 to 2010 over Avatar? In my opinion, yes and no. Yes, because it's fucking intense, and no, because of the shaky cam, as there were times it was distracting me for half the movie. We get back out on the field where a bomb explodes somewhere, and James tells everybody to split up, while others are going upstairs to check out on the civilians of the roof, while James gets something out of a car that is attached to a shit ton of bombs, and he takes the bomb suit off, and he wants to die comfortably, which seems kind of stupid on his part, while he takes off his headset, so he doesn't have to hear Sanborn's voice on the radio distracting him, and doesn't blow the bombs up. But at the end of the scene, he gets sucker punched by Sanborn for the reckless behavior from James, and that came off understanding on his part, because James acted like a reckless motherfucker while he threw his headset while trying to focus on what the fuck he's doing in the car, but Sanborn kept distracting him. So I'm more on Sanborn's side of the story for that reason, as James seems like a careless character, and at the end of the day, I don't really like him as much as Sanborn. James is approached by Colonel Reed, played by David Morse, to congratulate him for a job well done while he approaches Beckham and plays a game of soccer, as this movie is very gripping, and director Catherine Bigelow does a great job with intensity, like she did on her next film, I'll review eventually, Zero Dark 30, as well as making me care for these characters. The soldiers blow up a piece of land in the middle of the desert, and James forgets about his gloves and drives over to get them, and after he has them, and after they finish, they approach some soldiers from England, like a contractor team leader played briefly by Ray Fiennes. As they say they're on the same side of the war against the Iraqis, and they help with their military truck until they get attacked by some Iraqis, and people are killed, including some of the England soldiers, and they get some more ammo, and Specialist Owen Eldridge, played by Brian Geraghty, I don't know if I said that right, please forgive me, cleans it up with the spit and rubs it on, and they eventually kill the last of the Iraqis, and this scene was on the, as I was on the edge of my seat, it's very thrilling. Eldridge shoots another Iraqi at his 6 o'clock, while there's some lambs in that very direction, while it gets dark in the middle of the desert, and the sunset was a very good shot at this moment of the film. James and Sanborn wrestle as well as beat each other up, while they show James as a married man with a little boy, and that was a nice calm down moment for the character of James, while Sanborn says he's not ready to have kids quite yet, but I can't tell if he has a girlfriend. And does it matter? Not really, as I'm going with the movie at this point. While Sanborn punches James in the stomach, and James takes his shirt off, and after the punch he laughs, and like, is that all you got? And they once again beat each other up in a wrestling kind of way, until Sanborn pulls out a fucking knife, right out of the blue, and that caught me off guard, while James and Eldridge walk Sanborn back to his trailer, and put him on his bed, which was a funny, quiet scene at best, as I laughed at the end of that scene, because it made me laugh. And the next day comes, as Sanborn, James, and Eldridge drive to the other soldiers, whom we barely get to know for the rest of the movie, and go on a hunt for some Iraqis, as this movie is intense enough that I can almost take a dump in my pants. Not saying that I did that, but I could have. James sees a dead body as he believes it's Beckham, aka the kid who sold him DVDs earlier in the film. And why the fuck would they kill a kid? Like, it was his dead body, I'll say. And why would they kill a kid? Which is an unbelievably great question. Well, I could come up with one answer, but this is going to come off really mean, and I'm sorry in advance for this. Back in the days of 2004, the Iraqis, or Saddam Hussein, let's call him, he would kill kids like he didn't give a fuck. But it sounds like the thinking of Saddam Hussein, like I said. Not that I would know that if that were true, because I'm no expert on that. And the reason I'm saying that was because I've never been to Iraq, and I'm no expert on Saddam Hussein whatsoever, in general, except for he was a dictator in Iraq, who eventually was killed by his own people. Moving on. James carries the dead body of Beckham and wraps him up and brings them to the military car, and something's up with James, and he gets into the car, and suddenly a bomb explodes right out of the blue, and again, with a shaky cam, I don't know what the hell's going on in the movie, no thanks to the stupid shaky cam. James calls his wife, Connie, played briefly by Evangeline Lilly, who just retired from acting recently, as she was better here than she was in the MCU with Ant-Man as Jeremy Renner, and Anthony Mackie are also in the MCU as well as Jeremy Renner. And after this movie, and something is up with James, and he asks his boss at his DVD selling section, and then by he, I'm talking about Beckham, about what happened to him. And later that night, he asks the boss to bring him to Beckham's parents' house, and he just barges in about asking about Beckham, while pointing a damn gun at the parents, while the father asks James to sit down, and the wife suddenly attacks James like out of control. And he leaves the house and walks back to the military base, and when he gets back, James gets stopped by other soldiers, and he gets back to his camp, and Sanborn calls James to the military car, and they burn down a house and arrest some of the Iraqis, And these shots are absolutely haunting. James and Sanborn have an argument about how some Iraqis are laughing at the situation when it's not funny to begin with, while they look at for some Iraqis, and the shaky camp excuse me, is still going on, and that's bothering me, despite I really like the movie at this point, as they find the bad guys, but accidentally shoot Eldridge in the knee, and who does that? James. And next thing you know, James takes a shower while in his uniform, and he passes by Beckham, and he's alive and well, as he wants to sell DVDs and plays soccer with James while he passes by him and doesn't talk to him. And that made me feel bad for Beckham, as I didn't realize he was alive all this time, as this kind of upsets me. Like, they had to pull this bullshit, like, fooled you kind of thing. I'm not a fan of that. James and Sanborn gets Eldridge on a helicopter back home while cussing out James, and the next scene you know, we deal with someone wrapped around a bomb, and James comes to him in his bomb uniform, and James almost gets himself killed by trying to cut off the device, as he doesn't, and the countdown continues, and they run out of time, and he runs off, and the bomb blows up as James just lies there after the bomb explodes. Excuse me. And the soldiers are on the way back while Sanborn says he doesn't want to die, as he's not the same person after the war, and he says he wants a son of his own. And we get a shot of some kids throwing rocks at the military car, as this movie suddenly moves on to James being home at the grocery store with Connie, and he picks up a cereal box for his son while it's raining back home, and we see James as a loving husband / father, and the movie ends with James back in the Baghdad dealing with another bomb mission. And the climax shows how intense this movie is, and the entire time I was just on the edge of my seat. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 8.7 out of 10. The movie is very intense from start to finish, as I really do like the soldiers, and I cared whether they lived or died, as they have very haunting but powerful shots throughout the movie, and there were times it was haunting, like it was giving me goosebumps. The shaky cam was pretty distracting for half the movie, and there were times I couldn't see what the hell was happening, while James was the only character I did not like as much in this movie as the other characters, despite I cared for him as a character, but he comes off like a careless motherfucker. The movie is very gripping, as director Catherine Bigelow does a great job at intensity, like she did on her next film, which I'll review eventually, Zero Dark 30. And this is a solid recommendation, and does it deserve the Best Picture of the year at the Oscars in the year 2009 to 2010 over Avatar? Yes and no. The yes part is because it's very fucking intense, and no because of the stupid shaky cam thing which I brought up before, and this movie does at times, but at the end of the day, I was on the edge of my seat, and it's just a very good movie. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me until I get to Zero Dark 30, which maybe not till next year.